Well, happy Valentine's. Hello, Dr.
I'm Robert. Okay, get my stuff.
I'm sorry.
You guys can boo him if you guys want it.
Reno will send payment post. I'll just send it back. Ready? All right. Okay. Like I said, happy Valentine's Day. And for those of you online, happy Valentine's Day. It's my pleasure to introduce the P2P team that's going to be doing presentation today, and the team that's going to be supporting the efforts here on campus. So let me just talk about the introduction of CSUBUY Procure to Pay. It is a strategic standardized process to eliminate manual steps to create efficiencies through automation, risk mitigation, and cost savings for the CSU system in our campus. CSU Bakersfield is one of 9 campuses in the first wave and started working on this project over 4 years ago. And quite frankly, it was actually a project I started working on 12 years ago with Kathleen Prunty from San Jose State and others. There was 4 campuses at that time. So to see how we've come along is something that is great. You know, this will be one of the things I cross off my bucket list when I retire. Hopefully, you know, Dave, you can get that. David Gee over here will keep this thing moving forward. He's done a great job, and I appreciate it. So let me introduce the CSUBUY core team. So Tu McClure, who's on virtually today, she's been doing a great job helping to spearhead this and keep it moving forward. David Gee from CSU Procurement. And he's a really hardworking guy, and no, he is a hardworking guy, and I appreciate all your efforts in getting this thing moving forward. David Baxter, if you can give a wave here, he's the Rise Now consultant that's doing a great job spearheading this. Robert Parkinson, over here, you know, I got Robert mixed up with Nicholas. Robert Parkinson, another Rise Now consultant. Thank you for all your hard work on this. And Nicholas Thielen, is that correct? Thielen, okay, Nicholas Thielen. Another Rise Now consultant. Thank you for being here, and thank you for leading this effort. Our campus sponsor is the VP of the BAS, that's Tom Davis. And I want to thank Tom for all his efforts in helping us to get this thing moving forward and sponsoring the P2P for our campus and in the CSU system. The campus project team is me, and I'll introduce myself now. I am Michael Chavez. I'm the change management co-lead. I'm also now the interim associate vice president for business and financial services. Marina Manzano, the project lead and change co-lead. She's the director of procurement. Tina Livingston, who's the interim payment services manager. She is the AP lead. Felicitas Alvarado, who's the supplier lead. And Bianca Woldbooth, did I get that correct? Bianca, is that close enough, or is that okay? She's a strategic sourcing specialist that we just hired, and she's doing a great job working for us. And also Becky Lappin, who's our retired annuitant, who has been doing a great job helping with the P2P project. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the Rise Now team to start off with. And thank you.
So Tu McClure is going to start us out with the first part of the demo. So whenever you're ready to, go ahead and oh, Tu needs to be unmuted. I don't know.
Oh, there it goes. Can you guys hear me? Awesome. Thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Mike, for the great introduction. I'm actually going to dive right in because we have a lot of content to share with you all. In this particular session, we're meeting with the operational team. So what we're going to do first is kind of give you an update on the project, talk through the timeline. Then we're going to dive into a lot of demo for this particular group because your world will change with P2P in the future state. So hoping to share new functionality within the application for the operational team. And then after that, we'll talk through training opportunities and go live timing. And hopefully there's time at the end for some question and answer. However, if we don't get to your questions, there is a session at the end of the day that's 1 full hour of dedicated questions for the entire community at Bakersfield. So with that, you all may have seen this slide before. It is showing you a snapshot of where we're at within the project. Bakersfield is one of the 9 campuses, as Mike has shared. I call this group right here my original 4s. Right now we're about 65% through the project, and we are in 2 large work streams. First is the roadshow. So we've been on the road for a couple weeks now. This is our 2nd week, and we are tackling the central campuses this week, and then have a couple more at the end of the month to finish out our roadshow work stream. We're also in the testing phase. So right now we have a team doing system integration testing, ensuring that data is being passed back and forth between CSUBUY and CFS. And then we're going to start, we're preparing for user acceptance testing. What that means is getting the campus team members in the application to start testing and validating the functionality in CSUBUY and doing end-to-end testing. So giving you a snapshot of the major buckets of things that we're working through. So there are 4 buckets of work that are prioritized right now. So first is the preparation and execution of the roadshows. Second bucket, as I mentioned a little bit ago, working through system integration testing. So there are a total of 8 integrations between CSUBUY and CFS. We're right now finishing out supplier sync and payment status. The third bucket of work that we're doing is the preparation for user acceptance testing and executing that in the near future. And the fourth bucket of work that we have is reviewing the supplier list. So out of the 9 campuses, there are about 18,000 suppliers combined. What the core team has done is an initial pass at the supplier data to kind of put a fork in the road and build criteria to say, hey, we recommend these suppliers should be onboarded, but these suppliers need to be evaluated. That list has been provided to the campus teams. What they're going to do now is review that and tell us if that supplier should be removed and or added to the initial load. So those are the 4 large buckets of work that's being done by the core team and the campus team. I kind of flew through that. But if there's any questions about CSUBUY, please make note of it. Again, we have a lot of demos that we want to make sure you all get a glimpse of. So notate those questions and we can take them at the end, or we can take them at the town hall. So before we dive into the demo, I want to put a disclaimer out there on what you're about to see. So we will be demoing in the test site. And so there are multiple groups of individuals who are in the application as we speak. So you will see there will be individuals in there making final configurations in the application. There are testers in there. So things may pop up that we would normally expect. So that is one disclaimer. The next thing is that how it looks during this demo may not be how it will look in the future state. It should just give you a sense of what it could be like and a feel of the environment for future state. And lastly, the data that is in there for various things are fake data. So they're not Bakersfield specific or any of our campuses. They're just fake data to allow us to configure the application. However, you should be able to visualize based on what we're showing where your campus specific data will be in the app. All right. I know that's a lot of disclaimer, but in today's demo for the operational team, I'm gonna do the easy stuff. I'm gonna give you the layout of the land, share some features in regards to search and profile settings. Then I'm gonna kick it to Robert to do the heavy lifting with low dollar purchases. And then we're gonna show a little bit of for each operational team. So we're gonna demo some things for procurement. Then we're gonna demo for AP, and then we're gonna do it for supplier management teams, and then we'll talk through some training materials. So with that, let me go over to the application. All right, it's loading right now. So you should be seeing the CSUBUY application. Again, we are in the test site. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of the layout of the land. So this widget box right here is the shopping widget where end users can search for products that are available from our catalog and enabled suppliers. So if they type in pens, it will come up for them to purchase from. Robert's actually going to go into a deeper dive on the advanced, so that way we can show you how end users would narrow their search in a little bit. Then there's a showcase section here, and this particular section are the forms. So there are 9 forms in CSUBUY that we have worked with campus teams as well as the supporting administrative group that needs to review those teams to build out what the questions should be on these particular forms. So a lot of work has gone into these with the partnership of various users groups on your campus. Then underneath that, you will see a showcase of all of our enabled supplier in the future state. Again, this is just test, but in the future, you will see that list and it may differ, but it just gives you an idea of the cataloged and enabled suppliers that we have. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the demo, right now I'm logged in as Rocky the requester, which is an end user on your campus. So on this left-hand navigation right here with the flyouts, these navigations allow me as a user to be able to navigate to different areas within CSUBUY. It is limited to the role that I have. And because I'm logged in as Rocky, the requester and end user, I may not be able to process a voucher, but I should be able to search for one. So depending on your role, your access to these modules would increase. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is the search functionality on this top screen right here. So this top right search would be probably very useful to this team. This is where you can search for the documents within the application. So requisition, POs, and vouchers, this is where you would look for it. You could also look for other things if you have access to our other modules. So what I want to show you, and I remember it now so I don't have to look at my notes, is typing in a requisition. So right now, what I'm doing is searching for a requisition number. When I type in that number, not only does it show the document, that I'm looking for, but it also shows any associated documents to that single one that I looked for. So in this example, I typed in the requisition number, and once I did, the application pulled up the associated purchase order number that was created after the requisition was approved. Now, if there are vouchers associated to that requisition and PO, those will display as well. So just kind of sharing that the application has the ability to kind of connect all of the documents for you, so that way you can hop around based on what it is that you need to look at. Robert's going to show a different place that will show that interconnection during his demo, but this is one place that this team will use. I would foresee that this team would use a lot as you are processing recs and vouchers. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is this flag. This flag shows you your action item, so your work at that point in time. So if you have any documents as an AP processor or a procurement individual to review and you've assigned it to yourself, this right here will show that information. So you can easily know, what does my workload look like at that point in time. The next thing is this bell. This bell is the notifications for various documents. So all of our users will have a default of notifications by email, as well as in-app notifications. So what that means is, for different types of notification, you will get it in here. An example that I like to use is, if there's something that you need to review and look at, you will get a notification, and you can change your preferences as to how you want to receive that notification, whether it's in-app or via email. Next, I'm going to talk through a profile. So in your profile, you have view access to different things and access to change different things. The one that I want to draw your attention to first is your contact. That will get pulled over when you log in to the application from CFS. The next thing I want to draw your attention to in your profile are your defaults. So all end users can set defaults in regards to their chart field string. So if an end user always uses the same chart field string, they can default that. So that way, when they buy within the application, it will always pull that number up for them. Or if an end user orders on 5 different chart strings, they can favorite all 5 and be able to toggle between the 5 like a wallet. The same notion will apply with your addresses. You can default your delivered to locations, or you can set options so that way you can toggle between those items. Okay, so that's kind of the layout of the land. I'm actually going to stop share and let Robert take over. He's going to start demoing the low dollar purchase order, and I'm going to talk through that, what that means conceptually. So with P2P, we're going to have this new concept of low dollar purchase order. What that means is, if an end user submits a request for something that is less than $5,000, it is low risk, meaning it doesn't need to be reviewed by any other department, supporting departments for compliance to any policy. And it is from a catalog supplier. Then what will happen is it will route to delegation of authority, so for financial approval. After that happens, it will bypass procurement and create a PO. The idea is, because it is low risk and from a contracted supplier, that there isn't a need for procurement to take a look at those. So that's on the procurement side. On the flip side of that, when the invoice comes in and there are no mismatches, so there's no errors between the PO and the invoice, and it is not for a withholding supplier, what will happen is it will wait for receiving, and once receiving has happened, then it bypasses AP and gets paid. The notion there is that there's no errors, it's within tolerance, and it's not withholding. AP doesn't necessarily need to review it, and it will automatically get paid. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Robert to demo the low dollar purchase order process.
Thanks, Stu. Good morning, everybody. So I am logged in as Rocky the requester, just like Tu was. Like she mentioned earlier in her portion of the demo, Rocky is a basic requester, can only really place orders for himself. So Tu started out talking about the simple search. With the simple search, you're able to search for different products. You could search by supplier. You can search for a form or by part number. And then we also have the ability to do an advanced search based on some different things. The first part of that is the advanced search. In the advanced search is you are able to search by a category. So if you wanted to search by a specific category, say maybe I just wanted to pull up furniture, you can do that by selecting that. You're also able to go and look up results that have certain things. So again, you can search, put in by a specific supplier, part number, manufacturer name, or the commodity code if you happen to know that. You're also able to use exact phrasing. You can put in different words like red and blue, and it'll search amongst those. And then there's also this exclusion words that the way I always say is if you're searching for office supplies and you're looking for pens and you want to exclude maybe red pens or something like that, you can put in the word red and your search results will come out without anything that has red in the description. So just one of the ways to help speed up buying and get you to the results for what you're looking for as fast as possible. So for this portion of the demo, I am going to be doing it as Rocky, looking for different office supplies. I'm going to go back to the simple search and I'm just going to type in pen. So this is going to take us to a new screen, and you can see there on the screen that there's over 4,000 different results for pens. Under results, one way to get around this is you could be a little more descriptive in your search. So you could say blue pens and then maybe Papermate, and that will give you some results that have pens that are blue from Papermate. You're also able to use the filters on the left side that I'm kind of scrolling on right now. A couple of different ones are, say that you're like buying something that is like recycled, like maybe paper, you want some recycled paper, you want some green products. You can click on these and it will narrow down your search even more. You can narrow it by supplier. So as I select staples in this case, you could see it actually reduces the results by half immediately. And starts to narrow it down as we click. You're also able to narrow it down by category. So if you say like, I know I don't want the ink refills, I want to look at just, ballpoint pens, I can click that and it narrows it down even further. As you go down, there's different things. You can look by packaging, by each, the package box. And like I mentioned earlier, you're able to say, I want a certain manufacturer as well to help narrow that down for you. On the right side of the images, where you see all the images, you are able to get additional information about this product, because in this view, all you really see is the description, the supplier, and then the part number and pricing. So if you wanted to get some additional information on it, you're able to click into it and it will bring up a new window that has some additional details about it, such as like the supplier, packaging size, the units of measure, just all kinds of information. If there are any product flags, pens aren't necessarily hazardous material, but that if there are any additional product flags in there, like it is a green or recycled product, you would see those in that case right there. One of the features from this screen is you are able to add this to your favorites. Always recommend this if you are making purchases month by month. So like if in this case, you are buying office supplies and you're buying the same items over and over, you can create a favorites list and save it to your personal folder. Or at the bottom, you can see here, it shows shared. If you're buying for like an entire department and you want some collaboration on items to buy, you are able to share that out with others within your department and say, can you add items to this list? And it'll be one order. So just one way to help buying a little easier on everybody. From this window, I can also, at the bottom there, you can also update the quantity. So I can change that to 3, and I'm able to add this directly to my cart. If I was done shopping, I'm able to add it to my cart and go to my cart. So I'm just going to add this one. So you can see it gives me a success message here. From here, I'm able to view my cart, or I can begin my checkout, kind of like that Amazon-like experience where you go through the different steps of reviewing and then checking out. If I wasn't done shopping, what I can do is if I'm done looking for pens and I wanted to search for paper, I don't have to go back to the home screen to continue shopping. I can just come up here and change this search to paper and then do another search. Just like I could in that when I clicked on the advanced details for the additional details for the product, I can click this little heart and I can favorite that as well and add that to my favorites. So if I wanted to, again, if I wanted to add a product, I am able to update the quantity and add that to my cart. If I was done, like I mentioned, I can add this and begin my checkout process if I was done. A couple of other things to narrow down your search that I like to point out is where it shows best match here at the top right of the screen. You can sort these by part number, description, size, the supplier, and then pricing low to high. So you are able to do that from here. So for this, I'm done. I've got everything I need in my shopping cart. I'm just going to go ahead and check out. So I can click here on the pricing. And what you'll see is you have the top 5 items in your cart at this moment. It will give you a brief version of your description, your pricing, how many you have in there. And then it will also show if you have additional items in there as well. It won't show all of those. It'll just show the top 5. If I did not want an item in here, I am able to just delete it from here. So I will delete the second set of pens, and it automatically updates my pricing and my cart for me. So I'm going to move into my view cart. From here, again, another area you can shop. So if you did forget something or you wanted to begin a new search, you are able to type it in here and begin another search. And you are also able to use that same advanced search. The cart name, I always recommend to everybody when you do create a cart, it gives a generic name. So it'll say, in my case, it was like R. Parkinson and then the date. I always recommend putting something in there. So if you have to look back on what your purchases were, it'll help you kind of remember what did I buy from Ranger on this day? It was office supplies. So just a quicker way to help you remember what you purchased instead of having to click into each requisition. As Tu mentioned, with some of the things that default directly out of your user profile, she did touch on this deliver to location. So I didn't preset this beforehand. This is defaulted on Rocky's user profile as she was showing. So if I did belong to multiple business units and I needed to place an order and have it delivered to another location, any deliver to location that is open to me in the business units I have access to, I am able to switch between those. So if I needed to change this one to the gymnasium, I can do that, and this order will carry over. That will carry over on the purchase order as well. But again, whatever's defaulted in your profile will default here for you. From this window, I am able to review my items. So you can see my total item count here, and then it will start breaking it down by supplier. So I have a Granger order with 3 items in it. And then I see I have some gray bar items and some Staples items as well. Actually, maybe we pulled up there, they are Staples. So one of the things with CSUBUY that it allows you to speed up your buying process is instead of having to create a requisition for Staples and then a requisition for Granger, you are able to create all those at once in one requisition. And when it goes through the approval process, as I'll show here in a minute, the last step of that is the create PO step. And what happens in that step is it actually breaks those suppliers into different purchase orders where they'll receive only their information to fulfill that order. So when it gets to that step, it would take the Granger order, send that order directly to Granger without the staples and other details on it. So speeds up your process in buying where you can do all the requisitions in one. So some of the things I can do from this window though, very similar. Again, I'll keep probably throwing it out there as that little bit of an Amazon-like experience. I am able to update my quantity. So if I decided I wanted to actually buy 5 of these, I can do that. And you can see it will save it and update the pricing directly for me. I am also able to come in here and I'm able to remove this. So if I didn't want this line, I can remove that as well. If there was a contract tied to this supplier, I am able to come down to the supplier like we have on this staples portion of the order, and I can add that as well. So if there's a contract, I can note that here. I'm also able to update the commodity code if needed and use some additional details for that supplier. So I'm happy with this order. I'm going to go ahead and continue checking out. When I get to my proceed to check out, some of the details, as I mentioned, the deliver to location does carry over. You get your name gets auto-populated in there, and this is Rocky. If I needed to switch my shipping address, I'm able to do that. So any shipping addresses I'm tied to, I can just easily change that and then save it, and then it will reflect on that requisition for me. And it will go on the purchase orders to all the suppliers as well. So you don't have to do that multiple times. Draw your attention down to the area where it says accounting codes. These will be your chart fields that you're used to seeing. In here, these, again, what Tu is mentioning, some things will default out of your user profile. These will be the ones that are defaulted into your user profile. So if you find yourself using a specific set of chart fields, these will be the ones you can default. In this one, you are able to, if I needed to update these, I can click here and I'm able to update these. If I needed to add splits, I am able to add splits to this. And you can see on the right side, it allows me to split that by percentage. And then we also recommend the amount price, not the whichever one, the percent of quantity. But you are able to do that. It does give you a warning in case you're not great at math like myself and don't put in the right numbers to equal 100%. If you wanted to, if you wanted this, if this was just one order for, say, it was an all staples order and everything needed to go to that one line after you made the changes, you are able to click this copy to other lines and you could copy that down. So you can say, I want it to go just to that supplier. You can also select if it applies to maybe say the staples order as well. You can do just a couple of the items. So one way to help, change your chart fields quickly and not have to input them on every single line. If you did need it to apply differently at the line level though, you are able to come down and you can see I'm on my Granger order. I'm able to do the same thing I was able to do in what we call is the header level. So I can come down here, I can click on that edit pencil, and all the functionality I showed is available to you at the line level as well. So I can change, I can add splits as well, and it will, again, give me that warning to check my math. And just like at the header level, I am able to copy those down. So if I had multiple ones for gray bar, or I'll go down to the gray bar to show you that. For the staples, I guess they're all the same. So if I needed to change it for the staples, I can have that same functionality where I click it for the whole order, or again, just certain lines. So again, trying to speed up your checkout process where you don't have to change it a bunch of times. So when I'm ready and I'm done with this order, I want to check out. It's as simple as just clicking that submit order, and it's going to begin the checkout process. I'm not going to click that. Doesn't add any value here, but what it's going to do is it's going to change this out of a draft status, and it's going to run through some what we call approval steps or workflow. You may hear workflow thrown out there. The first step on any requisition is it's going to run through requisition validation. What this does is it's going to call out to PeopleSoft CFS, and it's going to check some information. First, it's going to check this user, make sure it's a valid user in the system. Going to make sure that that user is tied to the business unit that they're buying for. And then it's also going to check the chart fields. in two different ways. It's going to make sure, one, they're valid codes, valid chart fields, but it's also going to check the combo edit to make sure that it's a valid combo edit. So some, you guys might see it where people just click to figure out whatever works, I can submit that order. A lot of times it'll be wrong. So this is going to check it. Maybe they'll get lucky, but a lot of times what will happen is when they put those in and then they hit submit, if it is an incorrect combo edit, it's actually going to return it to them in this draft status. And then any user can find why a requisition was returned because it will place a note in the history for them. While we're here in this history tab, one thing I like to point out is this is a record of everything that happens with that requisition. So you could see even just today when I changed the quantity when I was checking out, it recorded that. So you'll always have a record of who did what. So if somebody changes something in the approval process, if you're buying on behalf of somebody else, you'll always see that record of it. So one thing I like to point out there. As we continue past the requisition validation, because this is a low dollar purchase order, as Tu was mentioning, it will hit DOA approval. So that will be the only manual approval step for this. Once it is approved out of that step, it's going to go into an OFAC check. So this is to check the supplier and make sure they're not on any sanction lists. If there's nothing comes back that they happen to be on a match to a sanction list, it's going to continue through. It's going to hit this second requisition validation. Again, just making sure nothing changed from beginning to end. If something did change and it was incorrect, it would go back into that draft status, as I mentioned. And then lastly, we have this create PO step. Once, as I mentioned, it hits that create PO step, this is where it's going to take that 3 separate orders and split it out and send them to the suppliers. Couple things I do like to point out on this screen. So your traditional view when you come to your requisition, when you're checking out, is this summary tab. You're able to see this estimated taxes, shipping and handling. If you had that, you can preview the purchase order if you wanted to. The big one that I always mention is this comments tab. So if you needed to leave a comment for somebody in the approval string, you are able to do that. Excuse me. I could leave a comment here. I'm able to attach a file to this requisition if I needed to. And I can also add a link if I needed to direct somebody to some URL for something. Once I add it, the person that you are sending that comment to will receive an email and notification if it's set up in their preferences. And then they are able to directly respond to that. So what you would see, and I'll show that on another order a little bit later, you will see that entire conversation. So it eliminates that having to send out an email or call and things like that. So you can say, hey, what's the status of my order? Or, hey, I need this approved as soon as possible. Need to rush this, or so whatever the reason is. So when you do get to like the voucher, you are able to, if the supplier is set up for it, to receive supplier messages. That is an option as well if the supplier accepts those. Not every supplier does, but we do try to push them during the enablement to do that. You are able to add attachments. So if you had an internal attachment you needed to add, maybe some supporting documentation, you can add that here. If you wanted to send an attachment to the supplier, you're also able to add an external attachment. And then again, we have our history again that will track everything that somebody's doing on this. So that is the nitty gritty of the low dollar purchase order. Tu, is there anything you wanted to add to this?
No, I think you covered it. For the sake of time, can we hop over to procurement?
Which one? The sourcing?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Sorry, I get the little bar at the top. I had to pull my screen down here. So we set up I previously set up an order here. This one is a request that requires sourcing. So set this up 2 different ways in the system. The first one part I want to point out is on this requisition, you notice that it is in that pending status. So this one has been submitted into workflow. Depending on what you're doing, if you're using a form, what you're buying, how you answer questions on a form, will generate what approval steps happen. So this is outside of the low dollar purchase order. We're away from that in this scenario. So Rocky was trying to create an order, but he didn't know who the supplier was. So he used a form, and I will take you to that form just so you can see it. And this is the goods and service request form. The first thing they're going to see is any instructions. So it's, if you're trying to do something for IT, use the IT request form. So it will give you some information on that form. And then it also mentions here at the bottom in red, if you don't know the supplier, put in the supplier not known. So when they were going through, they put in supplier not known. And then there's some additional information. So the goal of these forms, we'll talk about this in another session in depth, but the goal of the forms is not to give procurement everything they need to place that order. It's to give as much information as possible to place that order. So we worked with a lot of different teams to get some of these questions together for these forms, but it's to eliminate really that back and forth. So it's the general big questions that are needed to answer or to get that order placed. So one thing with forms, when they are built with some logic, so depending on how you answer a question, it will open up additional questions. So for example, I can change this, but it won't actually do the logic in this case. But this sole source, if you said yes, it's going to ask an entire list of additional questions. So that logic is built in directly based on feedback we've received. So once he submitted this, what happened, because he did put in supplier is not known in that form, it did generate a workflow step called supplier not known. What would need to happen with this is it would require procurement review. There is also an additional step later on as well for the supplier not known. In case for some reason it wasn't added, it will catch that later in the road and go back to procurement to add that again. The other way that this would function is, as I mentioned, I did fill out a form. We did with this one use another. You can use forms, or you can generate off of just general items in a catalog. But say something needed to be sourced. So we set this one up. And what happened was, based on what I was doing, it triggered vehicle review. If I needed to review this, so as a procurement user, I see it's in vehicle review, and this is actually with me. So I'm going to quickly just jump my screens just to show you I'm switching. And now I am logged in as myself. When I log in as myself, I already have it pulled up. So I'm in the same requisition that Rocky views, just from an approver's view. A couple of things I can do here as an approver is I can approve this and complete this step. I'm also able to return this to a shared folder. So if there's, things go to like a department for approval, like if there's multiple approvers on a department ID or something like that, one person can grab it, approve it, and then it'll move on. If they weren't the right person to take action on it, they can put it back in that folder. So that's what the return to shared folder is. I can place this on hold. So I'll touch on this here in a moment. And then I can also return this to the requester instead of just outright rejecting it. I can just return it to them and say, there's something wrong with this. And I can put that in the comments and say, this is wrong information. You need to fix it. I can also forward this. So if I, again, wasn't the right person, I can forward that on to someone else to take action on it. So I don't have to, again, reject it and do anything like that. Or if there is the option to reject it. So we always recommend, if there's just something wrong with it, return it to the requester, make sure they don't have to build it out. That's the big difference. If you return it, they don't have to create a new one. If you reject it, it shows as rejected. They can't take action on it. So they would have to fill out a whole new requisition. So this one is a request that requires sourcing. So what I would do, I'm not going to walk through, I'm just going to talk through this little portion. You can place this one on hold. So I can place this on hold. It'll put it into a hold status for them so they can see that it's on hold. And then you can add comments and say, it's on hold, requires sourcing. The other option is to come down to the line and I can click on the line, excuse me, and click on this drop down. I am able to click on this part where it says requires sourcing. And what it does is it's going to do a couple of different things. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to place this little flag on here, just notify somebody that it requires sourcing. And the other thing it does is it's going to create, as I mentioned, depending on what you're doing in the system, can create additional approvers. It does also add this procurement review catch step because I click that as it requires sourcing. If it does not get sourced out, it can, and I were to just approve it out, it would go to that procurement review step. So from here, if I was a procurement, the steps would be, it would go into sourcing, you go through your sourcing process, do your bidding. Once you got that, it goes on to contract and the contract's done. And it's in effect, you would come back here. You're able to, as I mentioned earlier, you're able to update the contract. So if there is a contract tied to this, and there would be a new contract tied, you can add that contract. And then I would remove the hold that I had. And I can remove it where it requires sourcing. And that would actually remove that step if that's the only thing that was triggering that step. And then I can approve that out and it would go out and create the purchase order. So I know I threw a lot at you there. Anything I missed too that you want to add?
No, I think you covered it. I just kind of want to share that the steps that Robert took to approve would be similar to what an AP processor would do as well. Once you do your review, you would go to that top and be able to approve, return or reject that particular voucher. So same process, just with a different hat. I think what we can do, Robert, now that we covered requisition requires sourcing, is to hop over to AP and kind of give them a layout of the dashboard and then talk through the direct pay and their approval process.
Okay. Yes. You can put in a reason. Yep. What will happen when I click on reject, it will pop up a box to input the reason why, so you can reject it. You're welcome. So I'm in Rocky right now. I just want to draw your attention. When I click this home button, it always takes me to this shopping homepage. Just want you to see the difference with that. So I'm actually going to log out of Rocky. And I am going to switch to our different user who is named Abby Approver. And I just want to show how where it lands is a different page. So we have a little bit different of a look than Rocky had. It goes to an AP dashboard. So these dashboards are configurable. We can update these to match the different roles that people are doing. So this one is an AP specific. Anywhere you are on the page. So if I am in contracts, I'm just going to click on search just to kind of show you this. I am able to click home and it will always return me to that dashboard. On this dashboard, some of the things to point out, there is an organization message. So this can be updated if some announcements needed to be made. The way we use it here is just to say it's a test environment. So everybody sees that front and center. You are able to search for different orders by document number. You can search by a supplier. You want to see all the suppliers for Office Depot or something like that. You are able to type that in and all the orders would come up for that. You can search by product information. So in our office supplies example, if I want to type in pens, I would see all orders that had pens as well. I'm able to look at the different types as well. So I can narrow it specific to requisitions. I can say all vouchers from a certain supplier. So I'm able to do that here. And then there is an advanced search as well. So the advanced search is a little bit different than what I showed you here before. A couple of things you can do here. You can narrow it by supplier. So that will narrow it down by the supplier. You're able to see the status. So if I only wanted to see the ones that were pending, I can do that. I can also see the different ones that are rejected. We are able to see by the voucher type, we can see how they were created. So all of ours in the system right now show manual, but if they came in through the supplier portal or they were like CXML, you would be able to see those as well. You see who invoiced it. If you belong to different business units, you would be able to see that. Abby only belongs to the Chico, so she can only see hers. And then you could see if I needed to see, oh, I only want to see the ones that belong to Scott. I can log in and see just his as well. And then there's a lot of additional stuff by like workflow step, approved by commodity codes. So there's a lot of these. Don't want to go through all of them. And then you are also able to save these searches. So if you do a search every month, you're able to save that search and have that appear in your My Searches, and it would appear here for you to view. The view that you see here is the out of the box view. Let me back here. I apologize. I clicked on my Save Searches. So this is what we say out of the box. This is how it comes configured on the first day. But you are able to come in here. There's some additional things you can do. You can search date ranges. You know, if you want between dates, you can say all time. You can say last 90 days, 7 days, whatever. You can do those searches here. You can add filters as well. So if you needed to add some additional filters, if you wanted to say like search by department ID, you're able to search by department ID. You search by multiple department IDs at once as well. So I could put all the different department IDs in there and leave out a couple if I didn't want the information for those. So a lot of information you can add here. You're also able to pin those filters. So you can pin those and you'd see that information all the time. And then you could also save that as well. So a lot of different ways. One other thing that we like to show in the demo is this, see this little gear column here, this cog. You're able to click on that and you could add additional, columns. So if I wanted to, I can say I'm going to add the business unit, and then I'm also able to adjust where they fall. So I can actually move this up and put this after due date, or I can say due date, and I can apply that. And then you can see now the due date is here, or the business unit is showing after the due date. So you can add your own custom columns to it and then save those as well. You're able to pin those to this. So this is one of the different ways, to do the advanced search. Going back to our AP dashboard, just wanted to quickly show you that. But some of the other things you can do from this, you are able to create a voucher off of this window. So if you're somebody that needs to create one manually, you are able to create that here. You will also see all the approvals. So you'll see any approvals that are outstanding. It'll give you some additional information at a high level, like how many days it's been outstanding, voucher number and stuff like that. If you do have any that you have created, that is this My Vouchers portion of the screen. Abby, in this case, didn't create any yet in the system, so it just shows there's nothing to display. If there's any past due, you will see those. It will show the oldest first. So in this case, this one's about a year and a month old, so it's going to show that at the top. But you are also able to sort those, and then you can show any vouchers that are due today or due this week as well. So one way to keep you on time, hopefully hit some of those discount targets that are in your payment terms. And then there's some basic safe searches that it allows you to do, like my invoice approvals, closed POs, and some basic reporting out there as well. From Abby's perspective, if I did need to approve a voucher, I am able to do that by clicking here. As two showed, I can search it up in this top menu bar. I can do it in multiple ways. I can click on my action tabs, or I can come over to my accounts payable flyout menu, go to my approvals, and then I'm able to view the ones that are vouchers to approve. So from this window, it will give me all the vouchers that are for me to approve that I can take action on. Again, some windows, some filters you see are some of the supplier stuff, classes, different things. So a lot of different ways you could filter this down. From this window, I am able to click into the document. So if I click on it, it'll take me directly to that document. I'm able to see the supplier, the pricing, and again, how long it's been in this folder. So Abby's sat on this voucher for 70 days, may not hit that discount if she doesn't take action soon. You're able to quick view it. So if I click on that, it will pull it up. So I don't actually have to go into it. I can just kind of, put this on my other screen and review it and see all the details as well. And it will give me everything, including my chart fields, the pricing, everything we saw on that requisition screen, you'll see. I am also able to assign this, and if I am able to, I can approve it as well from here. So one additional feature with approvals that if you have the permissions to do so, if you get an approval email, you are able to approve or reject directly from the email, and it will list a lot of the information for that as well within that email, such as your chart fields, who's the supplier, and the order details. So that's a quick overview of how to approve a voucher and how the vouchers look. Anything you want me to add to? Anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered it. So I think we have a little bit of time to take a few questions before moving to supplier management. Robert, just FYI, I can't hear anyone but you. So if there's questions that you need me to answer, I might need you to repeat.
Okay. Are we showing a direct pay too? I think that's a later session, correct?
Direct pay is this session, actually.
Oh, I apologize.
So I think what we were going to show was how the form would be added and how AP would approve it. We wouldn't necessarily go through every single aspect of the direct pay form if that was being asked.
Oh, yes, sorry. I missed that in my notes. So I can jump over to that. Before I do, does anybody want to have any other questions? Okay. All righty. So I'll jump over to a direct pay we have created. I am actually going to switch to my user again. I am back in as myself. I just have to pull up the one we created. So as two showed in the beginning, the different forms are here in this showcases. Our direct pay form is listed there. Kind of touched on this a little bit before. Anything that you're trying to do, it will give you instructions. So it may redirect you to a different form if it applies. Able to add the supplier. Then you go through the different fields. So there's some direct pay information. So it's going to ask, what is this direct pay for? Again, depending on how these are answered, can trigger other questions. So I'll just click on one. Request the supplier invoice number, gives you some feedback if you don't have a supplier invoice number, how to configure that in the system. And then the supplier invoice date. And then the last part of it is your cost details. So you can upload the invoice, different information you can add here. Once I do go through this process, I'm going to return back to this. Let me go jump to the other screen. So what will happen when this is submitted? So it's a basic form. When you fill out the form, it gets added as a line item on the requisition. So you do have to go through like a requisition to submit this. However, where the big difference is when I click submit on this, what's going to happen is it's going to create a PO, but it does not just send that PO out to the supplier. So that's the big difference. It basically creates like what we call like a dummy PO. It doesn't go out to the supplier. It's just for the record. What it will also do is it will auto create the voucher for you. So it will auto create this once you submit that requisition, and it creates, and it will basically do everything for you after you put in the details on the requisition. Did you want me to walk through the form at all too, or did you?
No, I think that's good. I think with time, I do want to show the AP team how we would flip a PO to an invoice quickly. So in the scenario that you all received a paper invoice that you need to put in the application, what that experience looks like.
So if I'm acting as Abby again, she's my AP approver. I'm able to come into the purchase orders. And as you see, I can see any purchase orders that are tied to my business unit. And so if I needed to create a manual voucher, I'm able to click on one of the purchase orders. So I'm going to go to this testing Inc. I'm going to click into that. Couple of ways you can do this. You notice there's just some additional tabs up here, so it'll give you some information as far as, you know, if there's any confirmation, shipments, things that would have to be manually input. If there's any change requests, receipts, those types of things. Any vouchers that are created against this, you would see listed here. But if I needed to create one, I'm able to click this plus sign, and it's going to create the voucher for me. A lot of the information is going to carry over from the purchase order. As we mentioned, everything kind of carries over from requisition to purchase order. You will see a couple of things. The only two real required fields that the system requires is the supplier invoice date that I could put in today. And then if I put in my supplier invoice number, I'm able to save this. And then I'm able to proceed with creating this voucher. So if I needed to review it, need to make any changes to anything, I can do it. And then once I click complete, it's going to go through workflow. If there's any approvals that need to happen for this voucher, those will also trigger and go out for approval. The other way that you are able to create a voucher is by going to the purchase order again. And instead of clicking into that vouchers, I can click on these three dots here, and I'm able to come down and say, I can click on create voucher, and it's going to create that voucher for me. And it's going to take you through the same exact steps. You're also able to come in here to the accounts payable flyout, go to the vouchers, and then come down here and click create new voucher. So this wouldn't necessarily be where you're just flipping it. But you are also able to create it here as well. If you are able to, if you wanted to, you can put in the PO number. So if I put in the purchase order number, you'll see that it, apologies if I miss a zero here. I'm able to search on it and create it similar. So I have maybe one too many zeros in here, but you're able to search and it would bring up that purchase order and you'd create the voucher off of it. So a lot of different ways, a lot of different areas you can find the purchase order and flip that to a voucher. Any questions?
Robert, if there's no questions, we can move on.
We have one out here too. as
Oh, we
well.
do? Okay.
Yep. Yep, so they would go to the purchase order and then they're able to create the change request. When you do create the change request, it does go through the approvals again, because if you're increasing the price or something like that, it's going to require additional approvals. And then you want to answer some questions too in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat. So if there's no further questions, we can hop over to supplier.
Oh, sorry. Hold on just 1 second too. They're giving a mic so we can hear, so you can hear.
I saw that there's a hospitality form. How does that work? When you submit a direct pay for a hospitality vendor, does that automatically trigger or?
So,
do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so well, I'll need to lean on Marina and team. So the direct pay form is, from our understanding, campuses use that form once the services have already been rendered and that the end user has an invoice to pay. Now, with the hospitality form here for non-travel, that is if you are putting in the request to start that process. So that's the difference between the direct pay form and any of the other forms. Now, Marina, if you are there, I will lean on you for your campus business process, but that's the difference in the technology between the direct pay usage as well as the hospitality form usage.
So I think our intent is moving forward that hospitality won't be submitted on a direct pay. So that way we can ensure that they do the appropriate process, that we receive insurance. If they're doing on-site catering, that we get the, the food permit on file. So that way that form will enable us to do that process without us just getting an invoice and paying after the fact, if I'm not mistaken. Correct too? Isn't that what the recommended practice is for P2P?
Yeah, we replicated the direct pay because it is going to be a transition for our campuses. But anywhere possible, it is recommended that you do what Marina has outlined.
What I don't know is how that will tie into our business meal approval form, which is a secondary form that we have departments submit ahead of time. So I'm assuming that's not built into P2P. I don't see it on here, so I imagine they'll still have to do that process. And then
yeah, Marina, we can take that back because I think that's I don't think that has come up before, but it's something we can talk through. So I'll notate that for us to figure out with the Bakersfield team.
Great. And then one of the questions I had, well, I wanted to kind of inform the procurement team, requisitions will originate with the departments. So they will submit and create the requisitions. Should there ever be the need for us to initiate a requisition, we do have the ability to do so on behalf of the requester, but that will trigger the workflow. So it would have to go through that review and approval process. So it's not something that we would commonly do, but if there was some kind of urgent situation where we needed to do so, we can in fact do that.
Okay, Robert, I think for the sake of time, let's dive into supplier management and then hold questions until the end.
Okay. So supplier management, this viewpoint that you guys will see, I am logged in as myself. We don't have a specific supplier user set up, but you're going to see this from the perspective of after it's been requested. So this is more needing to make an update to a supplier record, how to go through that process as well. So anybody with the permissions to manage a supplier will have this supplier view. You are able to search for a supplier. There's some additional options here as well. We're just going to jump into the search for a supplier here. With this, you can search directly for the supplier. I'll put that in here in a moment, but there is an advanced search as well, where you're able to narrow the suppliers down in a list based on like a lot of different things. There's so many, I won't go through all of them, but things like what is the relationship, if their contract, where are they located? There's a lot of different, different products and service. If they have diversity classifications, you can search by that. Some compliance items, status flags. So there's a lot of different ways to search for a supplier. I'm going to jump back to this simple search, and I'm going to just type in our supplies are us, generic supplier that we created for this. As you see, gives me just the one supplier because I knew who the supplier was. If I just hit enter, it's going to give me a list of every supplier. If I had a bunch of suppliers, maybe I just typed in supply or supplies and it gives me 10, 100 suppliers, whatever it is. You can use that left-hand menu again to narrow down your search. A lot of additional ways to do it based on some of the questions that come up in the form that they fill out. So here on this main screen, you're going to see some general information. Supplies are us is their legal name. You would also see their supplier number in the system, what their registration status is, how they were registered, whether it was they were solicited and they completed the form themselves or maybe by proxy, somebody created it for them. There is also, we'll tell you if the type, so if they are a punch out supplier, if they're a hosted catalog supplier, you would see that here. This one is set up as non-catalog. Any diversity classifications they claim will show here. And then you can see just when they were registered and last updated. So I'm just going to click into this supplier. We do get some additional information, just first thing in the supplier 360. So again, mentions they're in network, active, that they're non-catalog. Then you'll see their legal name, if they have any DBA names. And then some of that additional information you saw on the other page. You'll see like any NAICS codes, commodity codes. If they have contracts, you'll be able to see those quickly here as well. One thing we always recommend, if you have to make an edit to a supplier, not everybody will have this access, as we mentioned. So we want the suppliers to manage this, but you're in that very small group that can do this. Always recommend view supplier registration. The reason we recommend this, in the other view, you can see there's a ton of different options. So as I click into these, there's a lot of fields as I click through. So what happens is the items in this form are the required information for it to successfully sync over to CFS. They have that supplier information there. So we recommend here, because if you're doing it the other way, you can miss something and then you're going to have to go through a process of trying to figure out why it failed that sync. So first window you see here is same thing that a supplier will see when they come in here. So it'll give them, hey, before you begin, this is going to help speed up your process. Bring this information with you. It'll also have some questions when they're ready to answer or ready to register. These are the steps they'll take. And then they have frequently asked questions about questions that we've seen in the past of how to register. So company overview. They have to provide the legal name. So anything with an asterisk is required. They can provide a doing business as, country of origin. If they had a legal structure, if that needed to be changed, say it was a individual, there's another form for individuals, but just show you quickly, they are able to put in the social security number. They have an alternate way they want their name to appear on a check that can be added. Is it a government agency? Yes, no. And then a couple specific Cal State. Are you a former student, former employee? Question there. As we proceed on, some business details, year established, revenue if they want to provide that information. A couple required fields are the commodity codes and NAICS codes. Just so you're aware, some of the information that they can update on this does not require approval. So something like the year established, you don't necessarily need to approve the year they were established, but your legal requirements, their name, tax information, addresses, that's legal information that has to be accurate. So if they select stuff like that, it will trigger approvals, which I'll show here in a couple of moments. But wanted you to be aware, a lot of this stuff will generate approvals by Cal State. They can add addresses as well. So if they have different, different fulfillment, different remit to, they can split those up. If it's all the same, they can have just one address in there for all the types. If they have any contacts, you have a sales, you have a representative, something like that that needs added, that can be added here. If there's any insurance, they are able to add insurance directly in here. They can add their payment information. So we just, through testing, we're using the supplier, I believe. So we're doing some tests. So that's why you see check in there twice. But if they had their ACH, that would be added in here as well. Any tax information, they can add that directly here. They can add the document. They are also able to e-sign this. So this one shows it's not e-signed because us creating this for them cannot e-sign it for them. It has to be that actual supplier representative. So they can e-sign this as well. And then there's some possible potential withholding considerations as far as, the types of services they provide, and then the California state tax information. If they wanted to add any supplier classifications, as far as like diversity, they are able to add that here if they have any of those for ethnicity, race, gender, or sexual orientation, they can add that here as well. If they do add these, there are steps to add that supporting document, so they can't just claim it for whatever reason. They have to add the document there as well. So once they submit this, as I mentioned, it will go through a workflow step, even on an update that they make, depending on what they're trying to do. This particular one will go through the supplier review workflow. And this is the workflow that it's going to go through for the updates. The first one is there's a delay step. So if you're making a ton of updates, if we didn't have the delay, it's going to try and sync over to CFS every single time. So we built in a delay to allow people to make these changes. It will go through an OFAC check again, just making sure they're not on any sanction lists. And then there is a CSU system admin review, just to double check some of those legal changes that they made. So if it didn't have some of the, like again, I said year established, may not require that system admin review. So just so you're aware. And then once it's approved out all these steps, there's no issues anymore. It will go to this finish step. What happens there is it automatically syncs over to CFS. So all that information that was updated goes over there directly. So when the documents go into CFS, it'll be there. So threw a lot at you with the supplier. Any questions with that? One down at the end. It'll use the same number in the system. So to the question is, if they update their tax ID, I'm not sure that's a more of a
If they're changing their tax ID, it's a new registration.
okay. There you go. Yep.
Under the additional name that they want to be paid on, we want to make sure that matches to their form. Does they give them a warning that that name doesn't match their form?
Yeah. So what actually happens is what happens when it syncs over to CFS is there's a series of validations that take place, and I would have to get you the exact trigger that it looks for. But if it is one of those and it doesn't match, it can reject that
Okay,
as
good.
well. So
Okay.
the idea is to prevent certain details from getting over there that are incomplete or inaccurate as well.
Thank
So I would
you.
have to check if that's a specific one that's in there, but I would have to follow up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the clarifying question back is what form are you referring to?
The
Oh,
text, the text.
The 204?
Yeah, when they, on that one section where it says that they can put the name that they want the check payable to, that's the
Uh-huh.
one, that's the question I was asking, because they can put any name there. But we want to make sure that matches to their W-9. Like for us, it's 2004 form, but it also has to match the W-9.
Okay.
Yes, correct. We'll take that back.
Yeah.
We believe it should. It'll be a check by.
Okay, because they can put
system
any
admin.
name there and we just
For
want to make
sure.
sure. Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So Robert, I'm gonna ask that we hold questions so I can get through the rest of the deck. We do have a little, from what my schedule looks like, we do have a little bit of a gap, so we may be able to go over slightly. So everyone hold your questions really quick. I'm gonna kind of speed through a little bit the remaining slides for the team members that are gonna join in the later sessions. The last few slides, you'll get a little bit of it in the other sessions coming up. But what I want to talk through right now is the training opportunities that are going to come up for CSUBUY. So our change management team is building out a very robust training program for our campuses, helping develop the resources, the training materials for you all to sustain your learnings in CSUBUY and what you will need to do in the future state, helping you transition from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. We want to be able to provide resources that applies to the various roles that you will have in the P2P world. So a lot of variety of training depending on the role that you will have in P2P. Also, in our training plan, we also do have a slot in there to prepare resources for your campus even after the implementation. So that way you can continue your learning post go live. What I'm going to do now is talk through some components of the training program. So the first one is that we are working with 5 to 10 campus subject matter experts to review the training outlines for the roles that the P2P process will have. So their work right now is to take those outline, review, provide feedback, let us know if there's any other training components that we need to include in that outline. And once that outline has been signed off by CSU, we'll be working with the Rise Now instructional design team to develop the training from that outline. So CSU does have a lot of say in what needs to be included in the training to ensure its comprehensiveness for all of the roles that we will have in the P2P world. The other component I want to talk through is the Train the Trainer program. So each of our campuses have identified at least one resources, some have identified more, but they have identified the Train the Trainer. What that means is that those individuals will go through a series of training to become a trainer for CSUBUY. When we conduct our trainings for our end users, they will be readily available to help us do the training, providing the business knowledge on your campus to help the end users learn what their new process will be. Additionally, that resource will become a local subject matter expert of P2P to help the campuses long-term on the new processes and functionality within the application long-term. What I'm sharing right now is what the training experience would look like for the operational team. So first, the introduction of the training program on these roadshows. The next milestone within that experience is the actual training. So we will have virtual or in-person training, depending on your role, for our operational team. It's a 2-day workshop for AP and procurement, and then a 1-day workshop for supplier management. The next milestone is the weekly 30 to 60-minute touch base with our campuses for our end user, our operational teams, to jump in and bring questions. It's almost like office hours on a weekly basis, and that will be campus led. Then in tandem, we will also be in hypercare post go live. So for about 4 to 6 weeks after, the core team will be available to answer any questions and mitigate any issues after go live. And then once hypercare is done, we'll transition the campus to long-term support, where CSUBUY P2P team will help answer those questions long-term. And of course, as I mentioned, leaving you all's toolkit or resources to continue your learning after the P2P implementation. So this kind of gives you all a glimpse of what that looks like from a schedule perspective. So 4 weeks before go live are all of the communications to get ready for go live. Then 2 weeks before go live, we will start our training for our various roles. The idea there is that 2 weeks will be close enough to go live, so that way it's fresh in your mind on what needs to be done. However, we do anticipate that the learning or the training will happen when we actually go live, when individuals are in the application doing the work. In that case, that is why we have developed this large chunk of time to do hypercare and help people through that process after your campus goes live. And then, of course, transitioning you all at the end of hypercare to long-term support. This screen right here shows you the rollout schedule for our 9 campuses. Bakersfield is in group number 2 with a slotted go live of August timeframe. This is the goal that we have, and it's what we're striving to get to. However, there are some CFS configuration activity in preparation for UAT that may impact the schedule, but we will keep the team posted as those things change. However, this is our goal and what we're currently still working towards. With that, I know we're at time, but I think I'm gonna look to Marina and team. I think we have some time for a few questions since we have a little bit of a gap before the next session.
Okay, we have one here. Marina's bringing microphone for you.
I don't see the DOA on the timeline anywhere.
So that
What
large,
deal?
sorry,
Go ahead. No, go
that large, the one in the earlier slides, the timeline that I showed in the
Yes.
very beginning.
Where's
Yeah.
the DOA? That's the question.
So the DOA would run in parallel. So that timeline that you see is a very high level of our largest work stream activities. The DOA is embedded in that period. It is something that we have to account for and are currently working through.
Thank you.
Looks, no other questions too.
Okay, I know we threw a lot at you all and that it needs some time to marinate. My assumption is that some of you all will sit through the other sessions to understand different perspectives for our different user groups. Again, there is a session at the end of the day, a full hour of question and answers. We don't have necessarily any materials for that. So if you have questions between now and then, jot them down. We are here to answer those for you. With that, I think we can, hold on, I think one came into chat. No, I don't think there's a question in chat. So, Marina, I think we are good to close this session. And then if there's questions, just save it for the Q&A at the end of the day.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you all.